Good afternoon, gardeners. It's Tuesday, June 1st, and spring is coming to an end here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Most of my tomatoes have been in ground for 2 months now, and I'm really able to evaluate them, and I can tell what is doing well and what isn't in my area. So I want to take you through my garden and show you what my most productive tomato varieties are, and show you some that aren't very productive at all. But before I get started with this garden tour, you're going to notice that some varieties of tomatoes in my garden have abnormally high yields, and that's for 2 different reasons. So first, I'm going to link to a video above that will teach you how to properly fertilize your tomatoes. If you use the nutrient phosphorus to your advantage and you apply it at the correct time, you can force a high amount of blooming, which will yield more tomato flowers. Then, after that, I'm going to link to another video above that is going to teach you about tomato pollination and how you can use a simple, cheap, vibrating electric toothbrush to vibrate your flowers and produce almost 100% fruit set in all of those extra flowers if you have the right climatic conditions. So if you watch both of those 2 videos, they will explain to you why I have such high yields on my plants. Since this video is all about my most productive tomatoes, it's going to come as no surprise that the first few varieties I'm going to show you are going to be determinates. Now, if you watched one of my most recent tomato videos, I give you 5 reasons why determinate tomatoes are better than indeterminate tomatoes. And the top reason is production. When you grow an indeterminate tomato variety, it is a vine type, and that vine will keep growing throughout the season. So at all times, it's putting about half of its energy into growing more longer vines and more leaves. So only half of that plant's energy is going to go into fruit production. With determinate varieties, once they stop growing, they put almost 100% of their energy into producing flowers, fruits, and ripening. So you get a lot more fruits. This is a variety called Siletz, and Siletz is a variety I've been growing for 2 seasons, and I've made tons of positive comments about it. And that's because it is very early, it has great fruit size, it has absolutely incredible production, it can produce without pollination, it's parthenocarpic, so it can actually make seedless fruits, and it also performs very well in cool climates. So this is an absolutely exceptional tomato for an early season tomato to get a jump start on the year. And if you live in places with shorter, cooler summers like the Pacific Northwest, New England, or the upper Midwest, this will fruit for you and ripen for you where many other tomato varieties fail. And as you can see, it is loaded with fruit, but the scary thing is I've been eating off of this plant for 3 weeks now. I've already harvested over 2 dozen fruits off of this. So the fruit yields that you see right here is only about half of what it was 3 weeks ago. Now you may be saying, how have you been harvesting determinate tomatoes over 3 weeks? Don't they ripen all at once? No. It's a big myth that determinate tomatoes ripen their fruits all at once. They will ripen their fruits over about a 4 to 6 week period. It'll take them like 1 to 2 months to ripen all of their plants. Contrast that to an indeterminate, which will take all season to ripen its fruits, and it's often killed off by pests and disease or frost before they ripen them all. So you get much more production more quickly, but it still spaces out the yield some. As you can see, it has absolutely incredible fruit set. The plant looks healthy. There is no hint of disease on it yet, despite the fact that I started this off in February. So this is a delicious, early, wonderful tomato that does well in a variety of climates. So I really recommend the Siletz tomato. The next variety I'm going to show you is another determinate variety called Abu Rawan, and this is a new one to me. It's an Iraqi tomato that's supposed to do well in very stressful high heat desert environments. And as you can see, these tomato plants are loaded. They're just off the charts productive. So very impressed with this variety. I hope that they taste half as good as they look. I am very excited with just how incredible this variety is performing here in North Carolina. Easily one of the most productive varieties I've ever seen in my entire life. Everywhere you look, these things are just covered. The next variety that I want to show you is one called Bella Rosa. It is a determinate that's supposed to do well in the south, and this variety is loaded. I have 3 plants of this, and they are all loaded with these enormous baseball to grapefruit size fruits. Here you can see just how large and productive these Bella Rosa tomatoes are. They're easily the size of my fist, maybe larger. A lot of folks have asked me what's a good determinate variety that makes beefsteaks, and I think this may be the answer. They're large, but they're also perfect looking, sort of like a celebrity tomato. They have no cracks, no splits, no imperfections. Every single one of them look like they're out of a magazine. So if you're looking for a very productive, very large determinate variety, this is looking really good. The next tomato I'm going to show you is a Dwarf tomato project variety called Rosella Purple. And this is one of my favorite tomatoes. It's been one of my favorite for the past 4 years. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because this tomato plant right here is only 14 inches tall. It's very tiny, but yet look at all of the fruits on it. It has just an enormous cluster of 6 to 8 ounce large tomatoes. This is one of the best tasting tomatoes that you'll ever have. It's been one of my favorites for 4 years running. And the nice thing about these tomato plants are, because they're dwarfs, because they're so small, you could plant 4 of these in the space of one indeterminate tomato. So just incredibly impressed with these yields. Look at it. There must be at least 8 or 9 tomatoes on this little tiny 14-inch tall plant. Now, usually they get a little bit larger than this in terms of plant size, but I have these crowded in here pretty well, so that's why it's pretty small. But it goes to show you what kind of production you can get in such a little plant. This is also excellent for containers. The next tomato variety I'm going to show you is actually 2 separate tomato varieties. They're both cherry tomatoes. This one right here is called Super Sweet, and it is a disease-resistant hybrid tomato. This right here is called Sun Gold, which is another disease-resistant hybrid tomato. This Super Sweet right here is a red cherry tomato with just absolutely incredible yields, ludicrous yields. And they are so sweet that if you were to blindfold somebody and put one of these tomatoes ripe in their mouth, they'd think that you were giving them a grape if you told them that. They're very, very sweet. You could just sit here all day and eat them right off the bush and never bring a single cherry tomato inside for your salad. The Sun Gold, on the other hand, have a completely different flavor profile. They are very tangy. They're also very sweet. So I would say the Sun Gold is a very complex tomato. They have a nice little acid bite to them that finish very strong. This is easily, hands down, one of the best tomatoes I've ever had in my entire life. I could just sit here all afternoon long and just eat the ripe tomatoes off this plant. Sun Gold is absolutely incredible, and if you are not growing it in your garden, you are really missing out. The next variety is an indeterminate tomato that is blowing my mind. It is called Big Beef, and I've been hearing about this disease-resistant hybrid for years, and the yields on this thing are just off the charts. These tomatoes are easily 10 to 14 ounce tomatoes, and they are just all over these plants. Look at these fruit clusters. They're just everywhere. Everywhere you look, you'll find more and more clusters of the Big Beef. And what's really amazing is, here it is June, and there is no hint of disease at all. This is supposed to be one of the most disease-resistant plants you can get in terms of indeterminates, and it appears to be true. So I'm really looking forward to this one. It's supposed to taste great as well. And the next variety I want to show you is called White Tomesol. This is a free packet of seed I got from Baker Creek, and I'm glad they sent it to me because I never would have bought this tomato on my own. This is easily one of the most productive non-hybrid tomatoes I've ever seen. It is freakishly productive. There are dozens of tomatoes on this plant. The foliage is so dense and the plant is so healthy that I have trouble actually finding all of the tomatoes. But believe me when I tell you, this is absolutely incredible. And what else is incredible is it is flowering harder than almost any other plant that I have, including the hybrids. The flowers may even be outpacing a cherry tomato. I'm just blown away by the production of this. I don't know how it's going to taste because I've never had it before, but I'm just overall really happy with how healthy and strong the plants are and the incredible yields. I mean, just look at this plant. It is gorgeous. The next variety I'm going to show you is called Precious Pink. I believe this is an heirloom Indeterminate. I'd never heard of it before, but I bought this just because it looked really pretty in the catalog and no other reason other than that. And it's rewarding me with tons and tons of fruit. So this looks like a medium-sized slicer tomato, and generally they do better down here in the south where they struggle with pollination due to our humidity. So as you can see, this pretty small tomato plant is probably only about 3 feet tall, but it's just loaded up with big clusters of fruit, and the flowers seem to pollinate very easily. So if you're in a humid southern climate like mine, this is probably a good choice for you. In addition, since they're smaller, you can see they're already starting to ripen, so they're probably a good choice for people with shorter summers as well. This year I wanted to try these super hyped Chef's Choice hybrids that keep winning all of the All-America Selections awards, and I can see why. This is called Chef's Choice Bicolor. Look at this thing. Look at that. Just loaded, beautiful, stout, gorgeous plants, loaded with fruits, tons of flowers. It's so big and so strong and so healthy. It's growing through the fence. So I've been looking for a tomato that looks and tastes like an heirloom beefsteak, but actually does well here on the coastal southeast. And I may have found it with the Chef's Choice Bicolor. I'm just hoping it tastes as good as it looks. Here we go with the Chef's Choice Purple. Enormous clusters of fruit. In fact, see, I'm not used to having a tomato tour like this because usually by June 1st, my tomatoes are in bad shape and they're defoliating on me because they have disease. But I'm having trouble showing you just how loaded these plants are, and that's because they're still in such good shape. Look at this thing. It must be close to 5 feet tall, and it's just covered with flowers. The flowers are setting pretty easily considering the challenges of my climate. Starting to get a little bit of blight in the back. That's to be expected because it's June, but it's not slowing down the production, and it's still setting fruits up high. So at the rate this is going, with it still setting fruit up in these high up clusters, there's a chance that I could have tomatoes on these plants until August, which is a month longer than I usually get in my climate. Now we have Chef's Choice Green, massive fruit cluster right there, but even more impressive are the fruit clusters up here. They're so big, they're hard to get on camera, but they look incredible. And right next to it, I have a second Chef's Choice Green plant, which is even more productive. Big fruit clusters there, huge fruit clusters there, even more ridiculous fruit clusters on the bottom. So between these two plants, we're going to have some awesome looking green tomatoes for the rest of the season. And then we have Arkansas Traveler. Arkansas Traveler is not the world's greatest tasting tomato out there, but the reason why I love it is because of its disease resistance and production. As you can see, the plant itself looks incredibly, incredibly healthy, but let's see what is underneath all of this foliage. Huge, huge, huge clusters of fruit, just tons of them. They blend in so well because the foliage is so protective. So you don't have to worry about sunburn with this variety. This is an outstanding heirloom for the humid south. So if you're having trouble growing tomatoes, this is a great, decent tasting mid-sized slicer that will do well where other heirlooms fail. And now I'm going to show you Chef's Choice Red. Chef's Choice Red is already ripening for me. There are tons of fruits all over this little plant. And this is one of those plants that, again, it's probably less than 4 feet tall. And that's because it is choosing to set fruit instead of grow nice and tall. It still looks healthy. There is no disease on the plant. It is still flowering and setting fruit, despite the fact it's starting to get humid. So happy with this variety right here. Probably will grow it again as long as it tastes good. And this variety right here is called Big Brandy. I've been searching for a while for a Brandywine pink hybridized strain that retains the flavor and look of the Brandywine, but produces better, because I love the Brandywine pink. I've been growing Burpee's Brandy Boy for several years, and it seems like this Big Brandy hybrid is outproducing it. So I've never seen a Brandywine style tomato produce this many tomatoes. So while this is not the most productive tomato I have in my collection, I'm very impressed considering it's supposed to approximate the Brandywine Sudduth. So this is going to conclude my super productive tomatoes that I'm very happy with. Now I'll take you to some that are stinkers in my climate. And the biggest stinker in my climate is easily this big raspberry tomato. I have 2 tomatoes on this entire plant, and that's despite it loading with flowers, me hand pollinating them all with my toothbrush. It just won't set any fruit. It doesn't even look like it's that incredibly large of a tomato. The production is just terrible. And it's not just that plant. This is a second big raspberry I planted. This one has a whole whopping 3 tomatoes on it, and they don't even look that good. Look, they're all deformed, funky. This one looks like it has like a black spot on top. This one's kind of cool looking, but between 2 tomato plants taking up a total of 8 square feet in my garden, I'm having 5 whole tomatoes, and they don't even look all that good. So unless this is the greatest tasting tomato I've ever had my entire life, I will not be growing this one again. And the next variety that is a bad yielder is the Brandywine Yellow. Now this is the 3rd year in a row that I'm growing Brandywine Yellow, and it is easily one of the worst yielding tomatoes I've ever grown every single year. I grow it for one reason: it tastes fantastic. The past 2 years I've been growing the regular Brandywine Yellow heirloom strain. This is the Platfoot strain because it's supposed to have better production, but I have a grand total of 5 tomatoes on this plant, and they're not even that large. The plant is also starting to get blight where my other ones aren't. You know, very stingy yields. It doesn't matter that you hand pollinate, it still drops the overwhelming majority of its flowers. I grow this one just because it tastes fantastic. It's always one of the tallest tomatoes in my entire garden. It's already up to my forehead, but it just doesn't yield well. It's a great novelty tomato just to get a couple off of, but you're not going to be able to feed your family with it. Don't grow more than 1 or 2. The next poor yielder is Cherokee Purple. I've been growing Cherokee Purple for 5 years in a row, and every year it does the same thing. I've grown it in Pennsylvania, I grow it in North Carolina. It will set 2 clusters of fruit at the bottom, maybe 1 more fruit or 2 up top, and then it just withers away and quits on you. I've tried seeds from several different sources, several different brands of seed. It doesn't matter. You only get a couple tomatoes off this plant. I've never had any luck with it. I just grow it because it tastes good, but it never gives me more than 6 to 8 decent tasting tomatoes. I might start phasing it out, but Brittany loves it so much, so that's the only reason why I grow it. Some people say they have great success with it, but here on the East Coast, whether I'm in Pennsylvania or North Carolina, I can't seem to have a lot of success with this plant. It's always one of my most stunted and one of my poorest yielding. And my last poor yielder is, of course, the Brandywine Pink Sudduth strain. Last year, this actually did pretty well for me, but every other year I've grown it, it's been a pretty lousy producer. It has maybe 6 to 10 tomatoes on it. They're all pretty small. The plant's starting to get blight on it, whereas very few of my other plants are. It's been a very dry year. This is why I try to grow the hybridized varieties of Brandywine Pink. Actually, there may only be 5 tomatoes on this whole plant. It's been a really forgiving year. We haven't gotten much rain, very little disease pressure, and it's still getting sick. It's still dropping its flowers despite hand pollinating. I just don't think I have the climate for it. I very much rather grow the hybridized versions. It's not a good producer. I would not recommend this as a backbone production plant. This is just one for really great taste to grow 1 or 2 of. It's one of the best tasting tomatoes I've ever had, but man, it just does not produce well. And believe it or not, that's only about half the varieties that I'm growing this year. I'm growing plenty other ones, especially lots of other dwarf tomatoes, and I'm even growing the Chef's Choice Pink, which I didn't show you, but the other varieties are just kind of running somewhere in the middle where I'm getting good production. They're not terrible, they're not blowing me away either. So I pretty much showed you the best and worst of the lot, and hopefully that'll get the gears in your head turning. It'll give you some ideas. The ones that are really impressing me in terms of standouts are the Chef's Choice Bicolor, green and purple, as well as the Precious Pink. The Arkansas Traveler is always incredible for production, and the white Tomesol and the Big Beef are blowing my mind. In terms of indeterminates, they are all really great. And as usual, all of the determinates that I grow are standout performers. The Celebrity, the Abu Rawan, the Siletz, the Bella Rosa, they're all doing great. I've never grown a determinate that didn't set a ton of fruit. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to give it a like, hit that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing for future updates and more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in my garden, they are all linked in the video description down below in my Amazon storefront. So check out the Amazon storefront for some great ideas for fertilizers and insecticides and other products. So thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Dale, come on, eat this strawberry. I picked it fresh from the garden. Come on, buddy. You eat everything. Come on, you're like a garbage disposal. How do you not like fresh garden strawberries? They're so good. Dale, eat it. Come on. Dale, eat the strawberry. Come on. Please. Come on, you licked it. I can't eat it now. Dale, come on. Strawberry. Come on. Eat this. It's so good. I promise. Nothing bad's gonna happen. Ha ha. Oh. Come on. Eat this strawberry. Dale, are you hungry? You want a strawberry? Oh, no, I give up.